So, challenges, strategies, and successes, an overview of the realities of French-speaking immigrant women. You've eaten what? Our participants today, I'm going to present Faiza Abdaloui. The rest will present each other, if I understand correctly. She is the president of the Ontarian Association of French-speaking immigrants. She came from Switzerland. I won't know what age because we don't say what age women are. She's 30 years old, U.S.
Elle est engagée à contribuer à la croissance économique, à la santé et à l'engagement civique des francophones dans un contexte minoritaire. Elle est membre active de la communauté francophone.
She's an active member of the Francophone Association. She is a founding member of the Algerian Association of the Great Toronto Area. Please help me welcome Faiza Abdaloui. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to underline women, to give us place in your program. We do a lot of work. We have just presented a working paper, and we have a collection of stories. I will tell you about it. As well as being the International Day of la Francophonie, it's also the day, the International Day of Stories. We know that when we're speaking of integration of immigrants and women, we often have fairy tales, even if there's wonderful stories. There's great drama, great problems, many difficulties, reinventing ourselves. Thank you to Madame Honorable Maquet-Jean for what you shared about your story. It was very touching and very strong. It touched me because as president of the association and Canada for 10 years, I've heard this kind of story hundreds of times. I also hear here are the new programs, here are the new services that we have. Here are the groups that we're going to form. We want to act on the problems, but it seems for 10 years, and even if I'm optimist and I see progress, I also see every day by the calls that we make in the meetings, those of us who are volunteers or members of board of directors, that things are not going fast enough. And many women are well educated, either have formal university education or life experience, arrive in Canada. And I live in Ontario. English is an issue. So we were talking about integration. If we don't speak English in Ontario, it's going to be very, very different to integrate into the local community, as well as maintaining our language to be bilingual. It brings me to something else. It's important to encourage the creation of jobs by francophone entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. I had the pleasure, we never know where life takes us. 8th March, on the International Women's Day, I had the pleasure of being part of a roundtable. We were 9 women entrepreneurs. I was the only francophone, and we had the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and the minister, Maria Monsef, who's the minister of the status of women. They were there to hear us, to find out what our problems, what our challenges are. And I was glad to be part of the group, but it was difficult to be the only francophone. I said to him, I'm the other francophone, and I hope the next time there will be more francophone entrepreneurs around the tables. I was asked to speak to you of the MUFI, the Ontario Women, that exists for more than 10 years, created by immigrant women who came 20 years ago, who in Ontario and everywhere else did not find the services they needed. We talked about trauma, cultural adaptation. It did not exist. So they got together to create the movement. I love the name. I am happy to be president. A movement is different than an association or an organization. A movement comes from our personal energies, from our gut, if you like, from our issues, our problems, the barriers that we've faced. And it's immigrant women who belong to a great diversity. 50 nationalities are represented, who come together to try to change things, to eliminate barriers. But unfortunately, I think the movement will have to continue for many years. I would tell you a story before I start. You are the first to see this collection of stories, 18 stories of 18 women. These subjects were talked about last year. Arim had spoke of the fact that we had no models that we could follow when we have problems, when we have to start at zero. How do we manage? How did those who came before us manage? So we have these 19 stories that are going to inspire us, inspired by our big sisters, our mothers, our sisters. The first paragraph on Marguerite, that one who's never put her arms down. I was born in Congo because my parents immigrated to work in the copper mines. I'm originally from Burundi. I never would have thought I would have gone to a Western city. But in 1991, I arrived in Sudbury. I studied in the Congo. She got a degree in public administration. She worked for an organization managed by Americans. We never know what life will bring us. Her husband came to Canada to do a doctorate in Canada. When the Canadians understood that he would go back to a war-driven country, they helped him immigrate. He found a work and settled here. 6 months later, she joined him. First of all, she was terrified by the cold. We've all lived that. The cold of the north is not like the cold of the south. And she was also struck by how cold people were towards her. Although her husband had a proper apartment, she was uncomfortable. She thought life would be easy. She had I have professional training. I am well educated, but her education was not recognized. So she had to start over. The rest of the story is in this collection. What struck me the most in this story is a woman who came in 1991, and we are in 2018, and it could be exactly the same. We are working in 3 fields: research, training, and representation advocacy. It's a provincial organization. We don't offer services. We are doing research. I'm glad to meet other researchers here, and I hope to collaborate with them. Research, because when we talk about circumstances and individual stories, we can imagine that we are alone in our experience, and organizations who hear these stories or departments who think it's one woman. But no, when we research, we show that it's not one, it's 100, it's 1,000. And we need this sort of mass effect to be able to bring changes, to have one's education recognized, language barriers, you know what goes on. So we are trying to communicate with the departments, with organizations, and with those who provide services. The last research we did, Babaya Ketezi, who died shortly afterwards. She came from Rwanda. She survived the massacre there. She wanted to identify the economic barriers. We found 8. And since when, her legacy is that we are, for 3 years, trying to undertake projects to mobilize in a way to eliminate these barriers. So from there, we have training programs to give them the tools they need. I say women a lot, but often at our events, we will allow men to participate. Oftentimes, men don't have organizations that deal with third needs. So the training that we have for women, certain stories are not well understood. So we bring training in partnership with an English organization, OCASI, for the second consecutive years, gives us control over their French side. Not only do we do translation of English documents, but we work with them to adapt what they do to the francophone community. And finally, representation and advocacy. We had not done very much because we hardly have any money. I saw on the work that volunteers do, and here I am. I am volunteer director and president and entrepreneur as well. So this is how we all started, by looking at the advocacy issue. Something bothers me greatly, although I'm optimist. You know that I'm optimist. Is to hear the same stories over and over again, to hear about the same barriers. Where you work, where I work, we are there. We're in the field. We accompany these women, but we must also look at civil engagement because it's the laws, the policies that make things happen. If we always have the same situations, it is because policies and programs do not change. So I brought some examples of our white paper. It's our first one. We have with us a great expert on white papers, and we hope that the method has been honored. We've created this because in the next few months we have an election, a federal election. We want that immigrant women and immigrants get involved so that we can bring about change, that we are part of the consultative committees, that we are more involved at the municipal level. Yes, there's access to French, but there's also where to live, transportation, where daycares are. All of these issues influence all of us. Last year, for the provincial election, we had undertaken many activities, such as community radio, Choc FM in Toronto with TFO, and I participated in a debate with Radio-Canada in Ontario. So it was important to speak during these debates not only of language rights, those of us who speak one of the 2 official languages, but we speak of other issues such as transportation. Last year we did a survey and we asked, what are the problems that you would want the political parties consider? Lodging, work, daycares for young children. To remind you that the access to French services is one thing. I'm not yet a citizen. I'm going to be, but we are people who live here, and each subject is pertinent to us. It is important when there are discussions, when we're talking about affordable housing, when we talk about transportation, that francophones be involved in those discussions with English-speaking people so that we can show what our contribution is and also that we be more visible. When we speak of the French issue, I was at the manifestations in the fall, but we have to be there for other subjects. That's how we will eliminate many of the barriers that are in our way. So to raise community awareness of the importance of Francophone immigrant women's civil engagement, to stimulate the engagement of Francophone immigrant women, whether we're volunteers or on board of directors, or to be elected. I don't know if you followed the campaign of Ariel Kaikiabaga. She was the first municipal councillor to be elected in London. She is a Francophone immigrant, a black woman. Thank you very much. She is young. She's very generous. She shares her experiences, and I hope during the next election, I hope there will be others like her as well, to identify conditions for the increased participation of Francophone immigrant women. A reminder, if you have immigrant women who want to be on your board of directors, don't imagine that because they're women, they're only going to speak of subjects concerning women or just on immigration issues. We have other knowledge. We've lived other things, other experiences. So make us responsible for justice, for housing, for whatever, because we have something to say. In 2019 in Canada, we know that women have a place everywhere, and that is our issue. The first shock that we have is that our experiences are not recognized. I have lived this. And the second one, that we still need to fight as women. Women born here need to fight. And we as well have to fight. And we also have to fight for our French rights. So it gives us a lot of work to do. When we are members of boards, we need to look at all the experiences that we bring. On the white paper, we talked about what it's like to belong to Ontario's francophonie. We arrive in a minority context, and what came out of that while participating in an activity, we had a debate with TFO. How much time do I have, Stéphane? 3 to 4 minutes. We organized a debate that was entitled, "Who is a Francophone in Ontario?" We all talk about who we are, where we come from, where do we fit, where do we belong? Are we originally from Ontario? Are we immigrant our entire life? Carole Janot participated in the panel, and what came out of that panel, there is not one definition. But a strong point, or the common point, is that we're there to live a better life. And we understand that having French is a strength if we can get over the small debates of who's who and what is what. So first of all, we are francophones. So we belong to this French Canada, and it's important to be recognized as such. Another gap to fill is the knowledge of the community and available resources. I believe that we are reinventing regularly the wheel. I'm talking about organizations representing women. We feel that oftentimes we reinvent, we redo a guide, we redo a directorate, but we are doing it as well. We are preparing a guide to services available to women. with testimonials from women as to what they received from these various organizations. I came from France, first from Algeria, then to France. In France, it did not exist, a settlement program. I didn't know that a settlement program existed here. If no one explains what a settlement organization is, with examples, with testimonies, I have difficulty understanding what is advantageous. So having success stories is good. Testimonials are good. Then they become ambassadors to the community. So there are also persistence and unexpected barriers. Economic development is one. If the francophone community is not autonomous or not financially stable, I'm speaking like someone from Toronto. We are in a city that is very expensive. It's difficult to get involved at the community level if you have no money. If you have no financial means to do it. To be elected is expensive, so that's another issue. So that is what we heard. Here are the conclusions. What are we going to do in the next few months? We hope to have some support from the Department of Status of Women. A request was made. I haven't heard an answer yet. We're really at the end. We are exhausted. That money would be welcome because we've been surviving for 15 years, but at some point we have to be able to survive. So a guide.
So we've drawn inspiration from an initiative developed in Calgary by Anglophone women they're offering us their guide. We'll be able to adapt it. We'll be delighted to share it provincially, nationally, with whoever would like to receive it. It's about civic engagement and the role of federal elections so that we can vote knowing full well what's going on. There'll be circles and platforms. We'll also try to offer training, train-the-trainer sessions to train people in employment centers so that who are aware of the civic engagement question. If you're financed to establish things, but once people are there, you don't necessarily settle people, but you don't have the means to go speak to these people who have settled here to continue to have them use your services. We hope that it's in combination. It will be provided to you freely, and you'll be able to speak to people who have been settled recently, who are more stable, to whom you can ask these questions, and it will be an opportunity to connect with your new arrivals through mentorship. And we're going to organize debates, and we want to mobilize young women to encourage their own commitment and bring about change for the next generation. And I would end on that point because I'm 41 years old. I've been here for 10 years. I've heard grandmothers tell me stories. I've heard mothers tell me their stories. I'm the mother of a 10-year-old who was born here, and I hope that when he is my age or even before my age, that young women, those who are 18 now, coming out of school when they're 25 or 30 years, are no longer here. These type of stories it means a deep change. It means honesty and openness in our discussions to say when things are not proper and to work together and with heart. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now I will allow the other panelists will present themselves, and then I will ask the questions. It's an exchange, as I said before. So if there's something that strikes you, you can ask a question yourself or react to what's being said. So please introduce yourselves. Hello, I'm Ali Matouba. I'm originally from Senegal. That's where I studied. I came to Canada in 1993 to do a master's degree, and I went back to Senegal to teach at the social work school. I came back to Canada in 2001 to do a PhD in social work. And it's that training that has led me to be a professor. I teach social work at the University of Saint Boniface. As a profession, we work very hard. We work often with people who have social problems, women particularly. And in my readings, and I read a lot about women, especially immigrant women. I work at University of Saint Boniface. I'm a member of the board of governors of a place of a shelter for abused women. It brings me back to my roots and my social work roots. I see lots of that women are facing. So I asked myself the question: why do immigrant women, when I'm doing my readings, we're always speaking of the problems that women have? Women are abused, they're on welfare, they're dependent on their husbands. So I said, I'm a professor, I have a PhD, I'm a university professor, and I haven't had those experiences. So I said, why don't we speak of the women who have had success, the immigrant women who have had success? So I will have a sabbatical year. I had to find a research subject for this. I said, well, why not take that as a research topic? So my research topic for my sabbatical year, over 6 months, the topic is the professional integration and success of immigrant women from Africa. I did that research in 6 months. I've produced a report, and I presented it during the health forum, the provincial health forum, and people were very interested, and that is why I'm here before you. Speaking of immigration, I don't work in the world of immigration. I am in the world of teaching. Amongst other things, I will speak of that, challenges, strategies. I interviewed many women who have had success, who have achieved things. So we often hear of the negative experiences, but there's also a very positive side of things as well. That's why I'm here today. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacques Boivin. I do my PhD at University of Ottawa in public administration. I'm interested in my PhD studies is the experience of Muslim women in their immigration who are public officials in Quebec. And I'm doing a comparative study with Ontario. That's what I did with my PhD. Why am I here today? I did a research project on the social involvement and commitment of young Muslim women in Montreal. What really clicked when we had the debate on the Charter of Values in 2013, just a year before, there was the student strike in Montreal in 2012. During this student strike, I'm from Montreal. It's a very multicultural environment. It's a neighborhood that represents people from all around the world. Alongside myself, there were women from everywhere. And when there was the value of Quebec Charter values, they were speaking of people I'd never met before. The reality that was discussed in the media, it was as if you were speaking to me of another world, a parallel reality. And I wanted to do some research on young women's involvement in terms of immigration, Muslim women, because their social involvement as well, and social. It was a way to study the sense of belonging and the way of participating in society. It was also a question of studying women in positions where they're in power. Stop victimizing these people. Stop speaking of them as receiving things. This had no connection to the people I was, who were in my circle. What shocked me the most when I spoke to my research idea, sorry to my profs, I love them, but they told me, you won't find any women, you won't find anybody to research, to do interviews with. And these are people who are right thinking, quite open to the world. And I was surprised. Well, where are you from, you guys? There's such a lack of knowledge of things on the ground. So much prejudice, so many stereotypes. I had no problem finding lots of women. In 2 weeks, I'd recruited 20 women, and I didn't have to do any posters. It just a snowball effect. Spoke to one. Just 2 weeks. I had to refuse people. So that's what you shared in terms of that white paper. It really rang true with me. The token woman, to invite the woman because she's a visible minority on a board, it really hurts people. It's not relevant. We don't invite a white man because he's a token white man for a board. You don't do that. You invite the woman because she knows what she knows her stuff. My name is Boivin. I'm not an immigrant, but as a woman, when we have a chance to have the mic, it's so important to be an ally as a French-speaking woman. Now I have the mic today, but it's important. I say this to other women who haven't had to experience an immigration path, but pass the mic to the women who came out of the world of immigration. It's a way to be an ally. Thank you very much. Hello, and now, hello, I'm Denise, and I'm a bureaucrat. I'm very anxious for the discussions. Denise Garot. I am the director of the Center for Excellence in the field of comparative analysis between genders plus. Let's not forget that plus. That's in the new department. What was the status of women? And now we've become a true department, and it's the Department of Women and Equality of Genders. I'm a bureaucrat for 25 years. I don't mind saying it. And I've worked on lots of questions of social policy, including programs for labor market integration, community economic development, policies aimed at youth, and for the development of minority language communities. I'm a bit of a generalist, yes, but what has connected all that is the strategies, horizontal strategies that require the participation, pan-governmental participation. And that's the connection to what I'm doing here today. We're not the center of excellence. It's actually the center for excellence. We're a very small organization. We have to work with the other departments, civil society, people in university sector, in order to promote this the gender plus methodology, and I'll be pleased to talk to you about that more. Now, Philomène. When I went to school, my last name was Zed. Did not like to be the last one. I did not like to be the last one. My last name starts with Zed. Vaut mieux changer. I don't want to be the last one. Indeed, if I accepted to come here today because it's not because I'm an immigrant woman. I am not an immigrant woman. I changed this. Since 1994. I've not been an immigrant. I was a permanent resident, and I got my citizenship, and I ceased being an immigrant. I chose the country in which I am to work. I chose Acadie. I'm always invited to be in activities and panels for Acadie, the issues related to Acadie. That's what I'm interested in. Immigration, it's not my field anymore. That's done. The reason that I accepted to come here today to present the the sheet for the decade of African origin promoted by the UN. All of the member states for the UN should present activities to correct problems people who are African descent. As you know, Canada is a country where slavery existed. And New Brunswick did it as well. The last school to separate white and black people closed the doors in 1950. There's still people amongst you. They may be or amongst your parents. It's a situation that leads us to have difficult situations. While Philomene decided she's no longer an immigrant, that this immigration jacket she always carries it because of her history. The structure in which we live remains the same, and I want to be aware of that. In 1994, I started to become interested in the community. I became a Canadian citizen. So I have someone who held me by the hand. I no longer wanted to be an immigrant at all, but the person who supported me was no longer alive. That person supported me throughout these all Acadian activities, and it was the first Acadian World Congress. He said, "Philomene, take your position, take your place." And I decided, since that day, to take my place. When we speak of Acadie, if we don't speak of the Acadie of African descendants, I raise my hands. Oh no, you forgot Philomene. Nobody forgets me anymore. The black woman who's seeking her to take up her position, we're going to give it to you. Nobody will refuse it to you, but you have to look for it. You have to seek it out. And I've been living in Moncton for 30 years. 30 years that I'm living in Moncton. I decided that my children will not experience that, because I had the chance to have someone who brought me into that community, but not everybody seeks it out. Each time that I had something, I called, "What did you say?" Because you have to consult people first before you say something. No, so then if you're good, you can say that publicly. We need models. If you don't have any models, seek out some models. You'll find models. Thank you, ladies. That was the presentation. We said to do things not run too long, but somebody would like to ask a question. Yes, indeed. Excellent presentation. Thank you. My name is Marie Galoche. I'm working for the Francophone Immigration Network. I'd like to challenge the last slide. Because we do recruit, when we have candidates from immigration who present themselves for positions, what I'm always struck by is the difference in skills in terms of presenting themselves on the Canadian labor force. In my experience, based on my opinion, it goes against immigrant women. So when I see the last slide and see who got the job, not a major surprise. And it brings me to question, to what point, when we speak of these immigrant women as a sort of homogenous whole, we don't look at the difference in terms of feminism who arrive in Canada with skills, different social skills, yes, but an approach to being a woman that is different. When we speak of passing the mic to make room for people, I don't know that all women are at that same level in that group that we see as being homogenous. I would like a comment to say, what do we do in terms of the intercultural skills within the immigrant women, and how do we give equal opportunities to all those women, given that they don't start from the same level in terms of seeking jobs, taking a position on a board, and affirming themselves at home. Is that my question? It doesn't belong to anybody. But when we spoke of the movement in Ontario, we said the immigrant women. Well, a woman from Sahel is not a woman from Lebanon, it's not a woman from France. And when they present themselves on the Canadian labor job market, they're immigrant women, but the realities are so different that how do we ensure that we make establish intercultural skills between those women, and that when you pass the mic to those women, we take into consideration from where they're starting. They don't all start from the same level. How do we decode as the host society to say, where is this person coming? The woman who is from doing interviews, she can't even say I, because in her own country, she's not allowed to say I. So how do we establish skills in terms of leadership when 10,000 questions in one? Several hours to cover that point by point. Question of generalization. I don't like that question. I don't like that issue. I realize it. The movement of immigrant women, it sort of sets aside diversity. We keep the diversity in mind. I keep it in mind. I'm of an Algerian descent, Belgian. I'm neither white nor black, so I say I'm beige rather. Sorry. Your mother is beige. That's what I tell my son. My experience is quite particular. Some are privileged. Some parts of it are privileged. Others not. It's not even intercultural skills. It's culture, to know people's his story, and to be empathic about it. I'm very careful, since I was very young, to consider people as individuals. But when it's hard. It takes a long time to answer your question. We need to work, despite that, on a whole. We're seen as a whole, faced with the other. There'll be subtle differences. There'll be specificities, of course. As a black woman, if we're a Haitian black woman, a Congolese black woman, there'll be a difference in terms of their experiences there too. And there, as stakeholders, as representatives, we have to be very sensitive to these differences. In each time that we can, we will specify those experiences, those needs, and when we do advocacy work, we'll try to think of the person who is not at the table, the person who has the hardest time being there, and we work for that person. And I hope we have answers for the others. Ideally, the Ontario women immigration movement would not exist, and we'd have women who are seen as individuals. But we know in Canada, even in Canada, between different communities that have been there for different numbers of generations, it still does not exist. If you see Quebec, we're speaking of Quebec women. If a Quebec woman arrive in Ontario, she has her own challenges between francophone women, from Quebec and Ontario. Old line, there'll be issues. It's a human thing to be. You have to be empathic and really listen to the other person and to work together. In the role that I've taken up, it's the only responsibility and the only obsession that I can have when I'm at a table and then I raise my voice to speak. I'm not sure if I'm answering your topic, but I would have loved to record you point by point there, so I could address you point by point. Thank you very much. I would just like to say there's an exercise that was done amongst a group of people. There were 5 people in the room. 2 were racially black and 2 were racially white. And we asked the person to look in the room to identify the immigrants. And the person black were identified as being immigrant. And the 2 black people were not immigrants. It was the 3 white people who were immigrants. So if we were doing the program, it was the person who were black who were identified as being the issue. And when it came to hiring, we didn't hire somebody who was black. We hired somebody white. That person could be an immigrant as well. But during the ads and public awareness raising, we used the black person, but when we were hiring, it was not that person anymore because the issues changed. Now we're looking for other things. That awareness raising is speaking of it. It's a discrimination, it's indirect discrimination. And this is what we're trying to work on. And that's what we want to advance. On every March 21st, I go through, visit the municipality of Moncton. We voted on policies against racial discrimination. I went to the municipal council and I asked that if they could vote on that, and it passed unanimously. I went to the Dieppe municipal council. I did the same thing, and it passed unanimously, so that municipal councils can work against discrimination. I don't know if Mayor Cyril is there, but I think my next trip is to Edmundston. So it's in French-speaking municipalities that I'm trying to see how we can establish measures that can help us, so that they live better together. I don't want to go somewhere else. I want to live better, but I'm an Acadian who is black, and you have to accept that. Really briefly, I don't want to comment on that slide necessarily because I don't know the context. What I have seen, old ancient reflexes, we don't really take notice that we have them. The colonization, this is part of our collective imagination. I will tell you a recent story. I was approached to work in a context where I would intervene with First Nations women. And I said, have you thought to meet some First Nations women? No. I know it's not really an immigration-related topic, but it's the same sort of relationship. I can't really comment on that situation, that case. But in terms of the skills question, you have to do the effort as the person who's recruiting for the position to not perpetuate this type of dialectic. Are there women who could do a connection with a clientele? Would it be possible to find these people? Do a major effort, and as woman who has access to more opportunities as an educated white woman, we have to feel uncomfortable when we have an opportunity who could have been given to a woman who has more expertise in this question in terms of their own experience. I wouldn't have come on this panel today if there hadn't been any women from the world of immigration.
Other comments? Are we ready for the first question? Let us speak more, and then we will be able to. The question which was asked, what should we questions should we undertake to deal with the problems to which immigrant women face? According to me, what we must consider as a black woman is the history of the province, the historical past of the province. In our province, we have identity issues. If the francophones of the province have a problem with their identity, imagine how black people feel, young people of color, how they see their identity. So we must be aware of this. We must look at Acadians who are black, who come from minority groups, people who are not white Acadians. The children of Philomène live in Acadie and are part of l'Acadie, so I would like identity issues, consider that, and work discrimination for black people. As well, studies that show, health studies, for example, show that people who live in Canada, black people, show We always look at American models. I would like to be studied before I leave this earth. I came with certain problems, health problems that will remain if we are not aware of them now. We will not know the consequences of those issues. So I think we should look at the issues of the health of Black women or Black people in terms of language insecurity as well, cultural variations, communication. Sometimes we don't all mean the same thing when we say certain things. Is there something to be done? We don't all have the same accent. If I'm Acadian, I can have a different accent. That's what I wanted to see, a battle against discrimination in our daily lives. I believe in it. To know the visible woman, but who is invisible in everything that we do. And the last thing is to know I did not come only for immigration, for demographic issues. But soon I am going to be in a senior's residence. So find a nursing home that will have me, because I can tell you it will be an issue. In terms of this question, I think first of all, it's been said, all immigrant women don't all have, immigrants don't all have all the same needs. I looked at these women. Some have come on their own, some have come with their husbands, some came on their own, and there are women who were born here. So there are many different categories. If we see a woman in charge, we have to be aware of all of that. An example, in a community organization that wants to work with these women to prepare a CV. A woman who came from France or United States doesn't need to learn how to do a CV because they've worked elsewhere. Another woman who came as a refugee but had responsibilities in her original country because of the war has arrived here, doesn't need to learn how to create a CV. So according to the needs, we have to be aware of this. All the women don't have the same needs, and they don't have the same abilities. We must look at their life experiences. We have to see what they have lived in terms of the skin color. We can be 25 years here, and if we apply for a job, the first thing we ask is, where are you from? I was born here, I lived here, I was educated here, and we are asked where we come from. So be aware of this. What do women have in common? It's the fact that they're women. Whether they're from here or elsewhere, born here or elsewhere, they are women, and they are vulnerable when it comes to men. We have to look at the added responsibilities of the family. They want to be emancipated. They want to be autonomous. As Madame Jean said, to be independent, they need help at home. To want to work is one thing, but this is the issue. The balancing of family responsibilities with work responsibilities. In the francophone areas, especially where I'm from, there are very few resources available in French for these women. Immigrant women, generally speaking, they jump on the first job because they want to feed their family. Often men wants to do what he did elsewhere, whereas women just wants to work to get money. Often we stay in that for many years. We have to be aware of that, the sacrifices that women make. And also the couple, the life of a couple. Canada has many rules, many laws. I was asked if I wanted to stay in Canada, and I said yes. In Canada, there are many laws. When I finish, I'm leaving. And other countries are not often the same. When people come here, the man and the women are equal. It is not the same from elsewhere. So this creates a disequilibrium within a couple. And oftentimes a divorce happens and women become single parents where they want to finish their studies, raise their children, work. So they need resources to do this. When we're educated elsewhere in a different way. So when we arrive here, we often don't have the courage to go beyond certain barriers so that we can fulfill ourselves. So I take for granted, for example, in my research, we need the capacity to go beyond the barriers. We can be intelligent, we can have lots of degrees, but we perhaps don't have the courage to make the necessary steps. So we must keep track of this when we speak of immigration policies. I live in a province where we speak English. We must learn English even if we want to preserve French, and French is important. I teach at Université Boniface, and I always speak French. My English is not improved because I work, I live in French. But if I left Université Boniface, I have language issues. So these are things to consider. I see your pressure is going up. I will answer this question, but the next questions I'll have nothing to say. What must we consider when we look at the issues that immigrant women face? The reason I want to speak about this, I want to look at the analysis that was done. The concept of how to explain, to identify something interesting, a methodology, an approach, a tool. To identify what we must consider. The approach allows us to become sensitive to the identity factors, that it be woman, man, non-binary person, binary person, black person, a religious person, a person with physical challenges. By looking at all the factors of the different groups, we can elaborate ways to be inclusive. Since 1995, the government of Canada has the l'ACS plus to elaborate all programs and laws to be more sensitive to particular circumstances. The why and the how. The why. We talk in English of the carrot and the stick. For the stick,
des règles.
in the government there are rules, there are laws, but all decisions, and since a few years, all the Treasury Board decisions or by the cabinet must have considered this approach. All decisions of the Treasury Board, if these factors have not been considered, they will not be financed. This is why the departments must use this approach in the creation of its programs and its initiatives. Corinne, who's in front of me at IRCC, there's the law for the protection of immigrants and refugees, where we must consider everything in the development of programs. Now the carrot is a bit more interesting. Why should we use an intersectorial approach? By using that approach, all initiatives are more sensitive to the needs, get better results, and have concrete impacts. In terms of immigration, the consequences and the causes are considered. It goes beyond the biological quantifier of sex. There are many nuances in the terminology, that you be man, woman, from the LGBT community. There will be impacts on the process, immigration process. The age, challenges, geography. We speak of geography as being an important factor in access to services, à la formation, training, etc. So finally, how? How do we use this approach? We must demystify it. The way we apply it is simple. Is to place women at the middle of the intervention. We have to look at different perspectives. We must consider these women as the subjects of their lives, or not the objects on which we must act. We must consider questions which need to be asked in the development of programs, initiatives, whether it be at the government level or in the field. Do we have programs that were undertaken? What were the results? Do we have social data, economic data to understand the needs? And then the White Book is excellent. It's a rocket fuel for us. It's very well done. You received it with our request for funds. Have we evaluated our own hypothesis? Have we looked at cultural specific tools? Have we looked at factors that can create barriers to access? Have we considered the people? Can they participate? Can they participate in the elaboration of solutions? What must we consider? I propose that the approach ACS, intersectorial, so that we can be aware of our own biases, whether they are conscious or unconscious. We all have them. Thank you.
Effectivement, cette approche
This approach, as I've just discovered, brought something new to me. And it we talk about the challenge of immigrant women, but there are shocks that we can have as immigrant women with all the diversity. That type of approach. There's a department, an equality department, which develops this approach. It wasn't just done for immigrant women, it was done for women in general. So if we look at how to look at immigrant women's issues, the notion of intersectorial approaches, yes, there are women, there are immigrants, there are young people, but there are all kinds of things that make us unique. And this intersectorial approach will help us identify what those looking for our services need. The gentleman from the municipality, 50% don't go to the community. Who comes to see us and who doesn't come to see us? So this is the thing we need to distinguish. In terms of knowledge, we need to be sensitive, we need to be curious, we need to be passionate. You must be passionate to do this work. If you haven't cried or been touched by what was said to us by Michael Jean this morning, we have to always return to the human aspect of all of this. When I speak of this intersectionality, there's a person called Eureka. She's an older woman, an elder who arrived in Canada and who also has physical challenges. If you have someone who has a challenge physically in front of you, she perhaps does not know. She took the train at 4 in the morning to do her classes because she didn't know that there were free transportation services for people with physical challenges. So for 4 years, she got up at 4 in the morning. She had big issues, especially in snowy conditions. So sometimes we don't consider these things. This woman who's arrived in Canada, it's like clearing a car of snow. At first we don't know, but we learn. Your neighbor shows you how to use a snow brush. This is something I experience. But sometimes it's as simple as that. To put yourself in the place of someone else, to consider that person with her differences, her personality and her life. As well, I'm considered as an immigrant woman, but I believe in economic development and entrepreneurship. That is really my main interest. When we're speaking of integration in the workforce, we must look at volunteer work. It's one of the tools that we use, but that integration, that volunteer work must be efficient. Rose Katiandi has undertaken the idea of efficient volunteer work. It has to be strategic. You don't do volunteer work just for the sake of doing volunteer work, but you must identify what skills a person wants to acquire and how they can do it through volunteer work. Contrary to someone who's been here their whole lives, where racialization is not an issue, if we haven't lived here our entire lives, we have to justify our knowledge and our experience and place it within the Canadian experience. I would bring you the idea because it's one of the barriers identify the lack of English volunteer work in your organizations. Identify community organizations or English employers who would permit francophone people to participate in English, to discover its rules, not be afraid to place French-speaking people in English environments. Do not worry that they're going to lose their French. If we're attached to our mother tongue, that won't happen. Let us not be afraid. Economic integration is important, and I believe English is necessary to do it. We must also look at individual issues. We want women to exchange their experiences, to create an aspect of leadership. We do not use that word enough. The leadership, self-leadership, to believe that we can do something, that we can break down barriers, we can break down doors. It's like Phénomène has said, to take one's place. Money. We don't speak enough about money. Immigrants, newcomers, women in particular, must learn to negotiate their salary. When the husband, they will take the first job, and women will put their ego aside, but they must learn to negotiate their salary. Women make 23% less than men. Racialized women, immigrant women's, the gap is even bigger. I think it's 62%. So 62 cents compared to $1. So think of this. Financial education is important. We come from countries where credit does not exist, debt does not exist. We come to a country where there is a lot of debt, $1.74 of debt for every dollar earned. There are immigrant families that we greet without considering their financial independence, and this will lead to other problems. Briefly, because I don't want to speak of things that I don't know, I look at political engagement. But I find what you've just said interesting. Volunteerism as a way to integrate, to acquire abilities, and to augment one's network. This came out in the research. We are often afraid from high school on. When I was in high school, I wasn't worried about getting a job later on. I was just having fun. But I realized by interviewing women that at 15 or 16, they were already worried about not getting jobs. They already were worried about discrimination. They wondered what they could do to embellish their CV, to be the best candidate, so that when the opportunity arrived to go apply for jobs, they couldn't say they didn't have this or they didn't have that. One of the ways is to do volunteer work. And it's my personal opinion. It's good to be strategic and to be where your values are represented. It's important to be with people who share your values. And that sometimes will lead to professional opportunities. It's important as women to help each other. But I know that I'm preaching to the converted. It's true. We must take the time to look at our network, who we already know, and how they can be helpful. Thank you very much.
So interesting. So interesting that we went past the time allotted. We're a bit late on things here. If you want to answer the question very quickly, and I'm told for that 5 to 7 social event, crackers they'll be a bit too soft, I guess. Seriously. Thank you, ladies. Let us applaud Faiza Abdelawi, Philomene Zagio. She won't be last this time. Jade Boivin, Annie Matouba, and Denise Gatto. Great thanks. Big thank you to our participants. Time for the break. It is a 15-minute break.